Sorry for the delay. Oh, there we go. We're live on stream. Okay. Welcome everyone. Sorry for the delay. We'll go ahead and get started here. Nice. So, welcome to Only One Shader Survives, Surviving Core Shaders by our host Neylz here. And we'll go ahead and let Neylz take it away.
Okay, thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Neylz and I've been around in the mapmaking community for several years now. I'm both a technical artist and a toolchain engineer professionally as well. And more importantly, I'm also among the founders and lead of Sorena Studio, an amazing mapmaking team. We have a booth there. I invite you to visit it. About vanilla shaders, I've been making some of them since they released in 1.17. That was like 6 years ago, especially on control environments like maps. On a map, you can destroy any vanilla feature and you don't have to bother about compatibility with other developers, unless you're in your team, of course, but like that's a game. And that implies that you can touch any vanilla system, and more importantly, that you can have a lot of fun from those shenanigans. That's it for my presentation. Before we continue up with the actual subject of this panel, I've heard multiple times, even among the organization of Summit, that some people expect a presentation like last year, 2 years ago, but this presentation is about the making of the summit on the vanilla shaders side, because everyone expects something really interactive. But guys, I don't have the time for that anymore. But and it also to not repeat myself. I think I can always direct you to the original shader panel. It is still available on YouTube, so go ahead. But yeah, you can see this panel more like a continuity as or an extension of the keynote panel held by the Summit team 4 days ago. That will be kind of the same vibe, and I will present you with what solutions we came up with. And I've also heard that some people expect me to talk about Sona's booth. I will mention it, but I will not enter any detail about it during the presentation either. So but for both of those subjects, I will take the time to answer any question related to those or shader in general. It's not limited to those two subjects. I really want to answer any question, but after the presentation itself is not that long, so we have way enough time for Q&A dedicated. So I will make sure that nobody leaves with questions related to shaders unanswered. Okay, so not done. Write down your questions. There is people there in the summit organization, thanks to us, who collect the questions. So ask your questions, and we will take the time to answer them. Okay. So let's come back in October 25, when Curious, who's the art lead of Summit, sent me a DM about joining the team to give some vanilla shaders insights. But really quickly, over a few meetings, it became clear that it was preferable not having any shaders, at least for common areas, mainly because of modded shaders. Most people, or some people, might actually use modded shader and they completely override vanilla shaders, or it changes the pipeline, so it becomes incompatible. And so for those reasons, in the common areas it became an evidence that we couldn't use vanilla shaders in them, unless for small things like the no shade that you might seen. If you try joining the summit with a modded shader, you will see some of the elements are actually blue, and that's why. And yeah, so that's how it went, how it started, and it started pretty badly, to be honest. And that's how the discussion stalled, at least for until 6 months later, when booth vendors started working on their booth, including us at Surena Studio. And multiple vendors came to ask us to do some stuff using vanilla shaders. And with Surena, we knew for a pretty long time that we wanted to do booth as well with some important shaders, to have at least one place on the summit representing vanilla shaders community. But it kind of fell off to me to have an exception for our booth, but ask other people to do without. And that's when we brought up, so it is archive footage from 2024, but that's when we brought up a discussion we had at last summit with RX and Nexus about stacking vanilla shaders. However, that discussion kind of led nowhere because we didn't really had any opportunity to implement it, or there was Weld, but we never did it. And we started discussing about this again. And so this is this is nowadays, and it's exactly the same discussion as 2 years ago, unless that Nexus was just lurking around. And that's how we came up with what I've later called the shader development kit. I will refer to it as SDK, but that's how it started for the research story. So what is the core issue about stacking core shaders? Because when we are talking about multiple booths, it means, or multiple booth vendors, it implies that everyone comes with their own shader, and merging them is not easy. Why exactly? Because each shader actually overrides exactly the same file at the same time. So if I create my shader, core shader B, what I will actually do is not add a new texture to the game. It's actually overriding the vanilla file. So when you are alone on a project, it's easy to do because nobody else will conflict with you. But as soon as you start stacking multiple shaders, it creates issues because shader A, shader B, and vanilla uses exactly the same shader. So shader B will override the default file, and shader A will override that override. So nobody gets home happy, but shader A, of course. So as a result, it also creates other issues because maybe core shader B uses a certain amount of files that shader A doesn't use all of them. So it will override some parts not cleanly because shader A will only override some partial parts. Okay. And in Summit, we have exactly or really similar configuration with Weld, where all booth vendors have a separate pack. They work on their machine with their own pack, so both resource packs and data packs. And it all gets merged by Weld, a merging tool created by Smithhead. It merges all of them and it puts a final pack. But if we use the merging strategy that Vanilla uses, the final pack will contain only the shader of pack A, which is quite an issue when you are like 70 booths in a single event. So, I have a good example of multiple examples of issues related to merging the file. I will just restart that sentence. But what I meant is that there is another merging strategy that we could have, which is to merge the files all together and force everyone to work onto a single repository. Which means that instead of every booth vendor working on their own file, they would work on a shared resource pack, which creates many other issues, which include identify, because in Vanilla, when a shader doesn't work anymore, it just unloads the resource pack, unless you have a specific mod. But most of the time, it will just unload the mod. Which means that it is hard to identify exactly which boot vendor is responsible of the issue. And it's also eventually remove like the possibility to remove that boot vendor code work from which doesn't work from the pack easily because it's completely merged. It's a whole block. You cannot modify it, and it is quite easy to interfere by mistake with somebody else shader or functionalities. So the approach we had with the SDK. So I will define first what the SDK exactly is. It's a terminal tool that you can use in your terminal, but it is also a backend for Weld. So Weld will pull functions from the SDK and just make them work. So as we just framed, the issue was that different features or different files were overriding each other. So the first thing that we can do is namespacing everything. So each functionality is namespaced. So instead of working on assets Minecraft shaders core item.fsh, we will work on assets namespace shaders core item.fsh. Oh no, that's the wrong example. I have a second slide. So instead of doing that, we will work on to a namespace. And the issue here is that we are pulling from the core directly, which is quite bad because we would like to actually like it may contain text, but we cannot merge everything together. So we have an injection system such that, for example, if we have assets Minecraft shaders core item.fsh and that we would like to write into the main function, we have a specific input for that here, main.jsl. Did I add now? So here is a very simplified item.fsh in vanilla, which starts with Minecraft Mojang ports for the different uniforms they use. Maybe some uniforms there, it's rarer. And then the different inputs, outputs from the stage to the other stage, to the next stage. So yeah, so for example, in vanilla there is only from the vertex to the fragment. And there is this main function which is called. So it's separated into 3 different injection points. There is the header which executes before anything else. We didn't even inform the both vendors that this endpoint, this injection point existed, just because it is used only if you really want to load specific GL, what's that called? GL plugins. So you have to be really careful doing those, but it exists. There is include GLSL. So if you want to define other functions that you will use into your main function. And finally, the main GLSL injection. So it just permits you to directly inject code into that format. The important thing to mention is that here into main, whatever happens, we will execute the whole vanilla code. Like I scrapped some lines there, but the whole vanilla code is always executed, whatever happens. Okay, so that's where comes in the bare bone mixins of the SDK, because we wanted it to be automatic and be able to actually pull data from the vanilla shader and do our injections automatically, especially because when we started working on the thing, we weren't sure that it will be in the same vanilla version. So it acts as such. It pulls first from MC meta the vanilla shader. Then it detects the injection points. It's quite easy. It's like the end of the main function, just before the main function, and just after the hashtag version. It will input the different stuff. So it will input first the the different merging ports. Like the injection points are merging ports to specific shaders. It's in the SDK namespace, and I will explain why just after. And it also injects custom storage qualifiers. We will come back to those just after as well. But the important thing is that you are able to, like, you can generate this once, and then since it will be on a separate file, you can never touch the Minecraft Vanilla file ever again, and you will have everything plugged in for the SDK to work. Yeah, so so something I forgot to add is that that's maybe next slide. Yeah. So the issue is that, I will come back to this one first. The issue is that here, if we unwrap this file, it's just multiple merging ports in a row. There is no logic. You can just load everything once after each other. But in the main function, we want one specific behavior among all the possible behaviors. Because if I'm a boot vendor, I want to have my shader. I don't want to have the shader of somebody else. So the solution to that is the injection dispatcher. The idea is that, so this is a texture with the OV mapping of an item. So we have a pixel identifier, and it will check the actual color of this pixel, and it will check the color of the neighbor, and the neighbor is the shader ID of the booth. Yeah, it uses a binary tree because O log n is O nice, and with that, like, it uses the binary tree to find the actual code of the user, and we actually call the user's code wrapped into a main function, like a dedicated function. We generate the import. So that's a really small detail, but we generate the import of the user into their own function instead of directly unwrapping the whole code. That's really important because we don't want to have into a single scope, so the parent scope of directly in main. We don't want to have all the variables allocations from the different users. We want to have only the current scope being loaded. Unless it could crash some GPUs to have everything unwrapped. And there is something important, which is being able to pass data between stages. And the issue is that if we actually force or we push the value to everyone, like we allow everyone to have their own identifiers, an issue comes pretty quickly, which is that somebody could use, I don't know, 20 different identifiers, and it will just crash smaller GPUs. So the different, all those variables there are shared between the different booth vendors or developers. They can use the content of them literally how they want. We don't watch them, and anyways, once we pass the first stage, it's really easy to there is only one person who can modify them at the time, so we don't have any conflict, and so we expose manually all of those variables with different types and different qualifiers. Some interesting stuff which happened during preparation of the summit is that Mat4 on Apple Silicon integrated GPUs doesn't compile well because of the layout. You cannot just override the layout. So it's actually passed as 4 different vec4 from the vertex stage to the fragment stage. That's just like a small shenanigan that they wanted to mention because Mat4 is not supported by all GPUs. Be careful. That comes with some other conventions like namespacing functions. So we force all users to namespace their functions with their own what's that called? A namespace, yeah. So there is absolutely no override. And we force people who actually use the merge import into their code to use include guards. So there is no multiple overrides or the code doesn't get imported twice. That's it. And we come to the future of the SDK. What will come next? What we will do with the SDK? And first off is a better rewrite. Everything has been developed within like maybe a day or two into a single file, and it works really well, but not really expandable. So it will move to its own Python package, so it can be implemented into Weld. The main objective will be to permit any Weld developer to actually use the SDK, and so have actual shaders into Weld packs. So that will be pretty epic. And then we will like to expand the system to other core shaders. So currently it's only available for items. It will not be able, like we won't be able to provide it for all shaders. It's not possible. But there is some others like maybe particles. I mean, there is some thinking behind it, but left to do before doing that. But there is definitely some other shaders that we could implement. And then allow multiple shaders ID per namespace. Currently, there is only one, so each boot vendor has their own ID. That's the same. Like it's something that we also need to think about more. And finally, replace the injection system with a more modular system, which would allow mix-ins directly for the developer. So as you saw, there are mix-ins, but the mix-ins are only to input the SDK injections. As a developer, using the SDK, you cannot define your own mix-ins injection points. That would be the goal. And finally, the last point will be to be able to do GLS cell parsing. First, to verify that the code written won't crash the game for the final user. So we could deactivate only one shader for like during compilation. That would be really interesting. And finally, the last thing will be to be able to remove the different, like for the developers at least, when they are in their development environment, that they are able to not namespace everything. So we will rename the functions, and yeah, it will be pretty cool to do something like this. We could also like maybe optimize the parse tree, things like this. Infinite possibilities. And that's pretty much it. I hope this really nerdy presentation satisfied you all. But I guess like some people assume that there will be a fancy presentation like 2 years ago. So I will make sure to answer all your questions. And yeah, thank you for your attention.
Thank you for presenting about shaders. The cool thing about the system was whenever we started with vendors, we actually banned shaders because it was complicated to manage. And then we had a lot of people that wanted to use shaders, then Neylz had an idea. And what good of a time to come up with a brand new idea in the middle of onboarding booth vendors, and somehow it worked out. So a lot of the shader booths, if you've seen like Serena Studios, Stubeat has some shaders, Sandstone has some shaders. There's a couple others. Check those out if you want to see examples of how they all work together. It's kind of magical, so it wouldn't have happened without Neylz helping us out with that. So Yeah.
My pleasure.
But we'll be collecting questions. If you're on the live stream or in Discord, I'll be collecting them and sharing them with Neylz.
I will just start answering like that question from Max. This isn't necessarily a question for the panel, but what kinds of things are shaders used for in packs other than just changing the overall rendering? Actually, so I actually don't mind at all if it's not related to the panel. So feel free to ask other questions if you feel like it. So shaders in general are used to change the rendering. That's what they are done to. And I think maybe your question was, what could I do other than just change the overall aspect of the game? Maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I will try to answer that question. Oh, okay, perfect. So yeah, you can do with destructive actions, like on maps. There is many things that you can do by overriding vanilla systems. You can also like if you see. I will take an example that we've done with From the Shelves, which is the map we released last year with Surena. It's a game where it's an asymmetric game with a kid which is really large, and there is on the other team who are elves, really small elves. And the kid can take the elves and put them into jars. That's something that almost nobody noticed, but which fully relies on vanilla shaders. It's actually rendering the players inside the jar as smaller players. So you can really do basically anything, especially when you combine it with server-side logic. You can actually go to the Surena's booth there as well, or Stubit or any of the shaders here. They are using cool techniques to show different stuff that which doesn't rely just on rendering like a new aspect, like not just a vintage aspect. Those are actually in-game features or part of the world building. Yeah, I hope I answered the question. Okay, another question. What will be your clearest wish towards Mojang about the shader system? Okay, so I have one wish. Hear me out. We've got the post effect command recently. Okay, Curious is listening. Thank you, Curious. So my only wish is that we get data-driven core shaders, which would mean that we could compile any kind of core shaders, and then in the component of an item, we could actually provide the core shaders we want it to be linked to, which will just make sense because different items like glass or I don't know, like trident or a stone block doesn't use the same core shader. So in the future of the game, where everything will be component driven, especially around items and blocks in the far future, everything will be component driven. So it implies that if we want to do custom items, we will have to or rely on a basis. So we always use tinted glasses as a basis of the core shader, or they could just expose it at the components. And that would be really cool because everything we've talked about today would be just useless. I mean, I'm not of the kind of saying, okay, I would like that everything we've done just go to the trash bin, but that would be so much so much more helpful, and it would unlock like so much more possibilities. Really, like that would be my only one wish. Okay, so how did you get started working with shaders? I think I've just tried some stuff. Back in 1.17, there was just different shader stuff going around. Like everyone was kind of talking about it. And I've tested it, but didn't not really liked it, especially because I did not understood what I was doing. But it's just by trying. There is no secret opening other people's shaders. There is really cool repos online, mostly from, I would recommend the one from Bradley Q and the one from MCTSTS, which are like gold mines. You might not understand everything, but I think now with generative AI, like or LLMs, you might be able to understand anything. And yeah, digging someone else's backs is a really good way to start with. Start with simple ones, because if you get through the summit like merge shader pack, like there is really complicated stuff which is totally useless. But yeah, there is no good way to start with shaders. But then, like it's something unlike MC function. I hate to say it like that, but unlike MC function, learning vanilla shaders is something which can be helpful in your business or like in your work, because shaders in Minecraft are exactly the same in any other renderer. So that's a useful thing to learn. Okay. Okay, so is the plan to have some sort of attempt in Weld to do automatic merging once GLSL parsing exists? Depending on what you actually do, ideally manually implementing support for the shader SDK. Okay, that's a repetition, because SDK does not stand for software development kit. I know the joke, but it's SDK, not SSDK. In your pack would be optional. I understand if this is infeasible. So, actually, Alex, you might want to start. Like, I have my answer, but
Well, I mean, automatic merging in general is just kind of hard because you don't know the intent, and I don't know if there's a way you could assume the intent of the author, like by like dynamically rewiring stuff, especially if there's a specific way you have to summon an item model for the shader.
yeah,
Um,
that's where my answer led as well. It's just that, like, basically you cannot do that, because you can do a lot of destructive actions in vanilla shaders, like just override the vanilla system. Like, for example, if my goal is to render the whole world in black, I can do that really easily. It takes me one line in the fragment shader, and it's totally destructive for the others. So it's not something you can really do. You really have to um, um, not in an empiric way. You have to do it, I don't know, like differently. So well users are already using conventions for the greater good, if I may say. But yeah, it's important to rely on conventions to be able to do it. Just because you can have really destructive actions with vanilla shaders. It's not just a data pack. It's a bit more complicated than that.
yeah, I'll add for the weld side, like we won't even be able to do native merging for like root tables and stuff like that. It's very difficult to do automatically. Um, the best case for merge stuff related to weld, and I think what would be the case for SDK, is just being able to have it work whether you've used weld or not. So if you've implemented the SDK and you load it locally, if someone downloads it from Modern or something, it still works. Or if you go through weld, then it works even better. That's like the best case for merging, and like as long as there's compile time merging, then that's what you have to do.
Okay. So next question. What do you think will be the new shader features that Mojang will add to the game? Sadly, I wish it would be different, but it will be related to push shaders, just because that's what they've done. Or I don't think it will be an actual feature, like you may think about it, or like something we could use as developers. It will be more around the Vulkan migration and maybe enabling features or stuff like this. It's hard to guess like this, but Maybe enabling features. I don't have it on the slides, but there is multiple things that you can do with OpenGL. Like basically, if you have the courage to do it, you can open the pack of the summit and check for Surena's shader. There is like maybe 15, 20 lines of just preprocessors to enable like some features. It's something that you can do, but yeah. So I cannot really answer the question precisely. What do I think? Like, yeah, I don't think anything. I just, we will see. Which shader file for the summit is the larger? Oh, that's actually a good question. There is two ways to answer that question. First one is each file is like each single file, like what is the size of each single file. And I think that might be, I don't know, I think it's Sandstone. Sandstone might have the biggest file because they put all the imports into one single file, which works well. But if you compile all the code, it's definitely Surena by far. It's just that it's split into between like maybe 10, 15 files. So yeah. But there is actually a third way to answer, which is the summit, the summit shader. Because when you do a mod import, what is sent to the GPU, like each mod import is just importing the content of another file into the main file. So at the end, there is only one file left. Hence the name of that panel. Only one shader survives. But yeah, can we render a camera output inside the texture? The camera output. I will assume the camera output means like a viewport, like at a different place in the world. Yes, it is possible, but with like often with 20 asterisks, you will need to re-render the whole world. That's what some projects like Portal 2 do. That's like if you take the Sorena's boost, that's what we partially do, but just it doesn't look like the vanilla world, but we could do the vanilla world. And it gets quickly, really laggy quickly. So there is some limitations, like always, in vanilla shaders or core shaders, because it's something I did not emphasize on, but doing core shaders is much more limited than doing pulse shaders, or at least pulse shaders are supported, unlike core shaders. So doing pulse shaders is much more easier now. How do you recommend people get started learning shaders? Really good question. Welcome to the community first. Then I think there is D or the Der Discord Hunt, who just released like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, who released a video about doing core shaders. I really like. I did not watch it yet, but I'm pretty sure that it's a really, really good video. So I will really recommend you to start by this. I think my panel from 2 years ago is not that good to start with. Like it's just like some magic effects and like a lot of sparkles. But if you are at a point where you understood how to do isolation in a core shader, watching that panel would be a nice thing to do because it tells you more about the process rather than doing anything. And yeah, Eric is right. Starting with post effects is simpler to learn and use, but it's because post effects doesn't use isolation anymore, so it's great. Then I would recommend. It's starting to be outdated. We did not update it for a really long time now, but the Vanilla Core Shaders wiki has a section like it's on MCTSTS repository, which is called the Vanilla Shaders Core Shaders. Like that's the name of the repo. don't check the core shaders list. It's quite outdated nowadays. It could give you good hints, but there is also a file which is called uniforms, and there is another one called getting started. I don't remember exactly, but there is few files which are really interesting. Yeah, thanks, URX. Yeah, exactly this one. Oh, is it? Oh no, it's not this one. It's Vanilla Core Shaders Wiki, or yeah, this one. If anyone is interested. But yeah, those are good places to start. Okay. Do you have any recommendation or best practices for maintaining functionality of your own Vanilla Shader wiki, your own Vanilla shader, with the compatibility of external shader that is complementary in mind? No. Short answer, no. I don't think I've ever done. No, I don't. I haven't done any modded shaders support. I've tried in the past, but the main reasons which stops me is something I mentioned 2 years ago, which is basically that Sodium developers doesn't support our community at all. Like, they really do not. We've asked for multiple things already, just to have like edge cases, or because Sodium does modify the pipeline, like does modify the rendering pipeline, but only for terrain. They don't modify items. So you could have inconsistencies visually when you have an item which works but not the block. So you might want to have an edge case for when you know that it is Sodium. You can actually detect it and do a slightly different behavior on the item. But they don't want to expose that. So there is ways to do it with shenanigans, like using functions in a different way. But yeah, it's barely possible. And with complementary, it's just not possible. Or you need to do the work twice. You need to work to do it for complementary. You need to do it for vanilla, and you will need to do it for every single modded shader that exists. So quite difficult to do. For Summit, only had item-based core shaders. What other core shaders do you think would be easy to work with as items? Text shaders or even shaders like screen effects and text effects, the one that jiggles in chat. So text is really easy. It's really, really easy to do. I even hesitated to implement it, and we just limited it to items because it, like, I think we have actually done we've released the SDK maybe in WaterX June, something like this, like really late in the process. So we didn't want it to have like too much work or too much things which doesn't work, and we have to fix it. Really hard to do, yeah. So yep. Okay, yeah. So the other things, there is text. There is particles, but particles that will require to actually use the dust particle, which I'm not that much of a huge fan. It will need discussion. I cannot say it will be done. It's just that it is possible with asterisks once again. So yeah. And is there others that I could think of? No, not like that. I can think of other things which are easy to do. Maybe terrain, but terrain is almost never used, so it will be worthless in a limited time to do. And okay, last question. Where can we see updates about the SDK? MCC Smithed Swana Studio. I think the main place for that will be Smithed, because Weld is in Smithed. We will talk about it into MCC for sure. Suona Studios, feel free to join the Discord. Maybe there will be a separate server. I don't know, but be sure that you will hear about it on Smithhead, 100%. It will be into the feed of MCC as well. But yeah, since it introduces new conventions, it will be in Smithhead. Smithhead is a go-to place. But yeah. Satadak. Okay, so I think we are done, actually, within the time frame. So thank you everyone for the attention, and
thanks for presenting today. Thanks everyone for joining us. And I think check the calendar if there's other events you're interested in. I know we're getting towards the end, but we have still some fun stuff happening on Friday. And if I get a chance, maybe I can sneak a beat workshop, maybe. But yeah, enjoy the rest of Summit. We actually did a bunch of rolling restarts today, so performance should be all fixed if you had some rough performance in the morning. Actually, do I know the next one? Oh yeah, we have the oddities of Minecraft data packing happening in a couple hours from now. So do look out for that if you are interested. Other than that, take care everyone. I'll see you later.
Bye-bye.